It's Mackey here for Federated Mutual Insurance Company. They've been around for over 100 years, helping business owners maximize the success of their business through risk management tools and resources. It's like having a great offensive line for your business, just thwarting off risks and things that could potentially cost your bottom line. Find out how Federated can help your business by going to federatedinsurance.com, where it's our business to protect yours.
I had no problem with quick releases from guys.
It's Mackey and Judd with Ramie.
Join the Minnesota Vikings, credit Rick Spielman, Mike Zimmer. Great job. Justin Jefferson and Jeff Gladney in the first round. Jefferson, wide receiver, LSU. Gladney, cornerback, TCU. I love the 2 fourth-round picks. James Lynch, defensive lineman, Baylor, and Troy Dye, linebacker, Oregon.
Man, you add Justin Jefferson to the mix. Unlike, and I'm sorry, Packers fans, you know you needed a wide receiver. Well, they lost Stephon Diggs, and they went out and got a new Stephon Diggs for their offense, and that's what Justin Jefferson can do. But it didn't stop there. Jeff Gladney, to me, was the third best corner in this draft. While he is only 5'10", a little over 5'10", he does have the ability to make a tremendous amount of plays on the football.
I haven't found a negative thing said about the Vikings draft in 72 hours. Mackey and Judd with Ramie, Score North and the Score North app. And you can always subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or the aforementioned Score North app. And gentlemen, let's start the show. We're going to get into The Last Dance. We're going to get into all kinds of things recapping the draft that was this past weekend. And bonus action movie rewind tomorrow on the show, because we didn't give you that on Friday last week. So we're going to have a double dose this week. But what is, with all the positive reviews about the Vikings draft, and I think the worst letter grade I've seen is like a B+. Otherwise, everyone who did letter grades is A minus, B+. What is your favorite thing about the Vikings draft from any of the 15 picks, anywhere you want to go with this? Your favorite thing about the Vikings draft this last weekend?
Getting 15 picks, right? I mean, is that not Rick being
Judd just
Rick?
Stole my answer.
Getting
Judd
15
just stole my answer.
It's in the modern era 7-round draft. It's the record, and so Collar
Rick's
and
been eyeing that for 10 years, right?
Collar and I were doing the draft show late Friday, right? And Courtney joins us, and it's shortly before the Vikings are set to take their last pick in the third round. And Courtney and Collar both like, he's going to trade. I'm like, I don't know at this point. He not only works that trade with the Saints guys, but he works it to get the rest of the Saints draft. It is the most Spielman of Spielman, and I'm not saying it makes it a great draft, and I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying this was, if there's ever been quintessential Rick, 15 picks, Ramie Maklov is quintessential Rick Spielman.
I half expected him, Ramie, to just announce his retirement the next day and say, my work
just go out on
done.
top.
My life's work is done.
This was his Super Bowl victory. Managing to pick 14 guys in one draft was his Super Bowl victory.
So what was, okay, aside from him just getting that many picks, what was your...
Sorry, but it's just...
No, that's all right.
It's incredible.
What Rick Spielman did, and this is a very drafty term, football drafty term, he let the board fall to him.
Football.
He didn't reach. Wow. He didn't let any good players at a position of need pass him by.
He didn't get outside himself.
Football. When he saw a player at a position of need who was among the best in the board, who might go in the next few picks, he took him. When he saw a chance to move back and get more picks and still get a player at one of those positions of need who he thought was at the top of what was left from that position group, he went and drafted him. Or he traded down if he thought he could still get him. I thought it was a brilliantly executed draft by Rick Spielman. Now, will that turn into a whole bunch of good football players? Who knows? The NFL draft is a complete and total crapshoot. But he gave himself the most chances at doing it, and like I said, let the board fall to him.
And that, what Ramie just said there, is why it becomes less of a crapshoot if you have more bodies. And I think there's a case to be made for using some of your draft capital to trade for a Trent Williams, and we'll dive into those reports and discussions. But like, was there an opportunity to trade up in the first round for someone and only wind up with 12 or 13 picks in the total draft, or trade up for a player that you like in the second round a little bit better than Ezra Cleveland. Like there's all sorts of things you can parse apart here, but ultimately when you draft 15 players, you're giving yourself the best chance that 5, 6, or 7 of them become starting caliber guys on your team. So if the goal was let's get younger, let's retool this roster, and let's give us the best opportunity in the 2020 draft to make sure that we land like a handful or more of starting caliber players.
Right.
Well, having 15 picks is one way to go about that. It's kind of a math equation.
And I think the difference here, too, is needs. Because we've seen Spielman conduct a lot of drafts where you feel like the Vikings have, let's say, 2 or 3 needs, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, are you going to get that guy for that spot? This draft was, I don't recall the last time the Vikings went into a draft needing this many players at different positions. So I think you had the luxury this year of accumulating picks and just basically sitting there and making them. And so, first round, receiver, awesome, that's great. Cornerbacks, take 4, that's fine, or 3. Safeties, take 2. Tackle, take 1 or 2. So I think the difference, too, is our perception of what Spielman did is probably more positive based on the fact that the Vikings entered that draft with a plethora of needs as opposed to the years where it's just been like, if you get a cornerback, you're fine.
Also, as Jonathan points out, the Vikings already have 12 picks in next year's draft. So they could wind up in a 2-year period. They could wind up drafting 27 players.
Rick really might just retire and walk off into the sunset, guys.
It's 12 right now.
What else is left for a GM to do?
Yeah, it's 12 right now. Let me get the breakdown here.
Because if it's 12 right now, he's going to have at least 2, if not 3 more compensatory picks.
That's part of the compensatory.
Oh, okay.
12 is with the compensatory.
The point is, in 2021, if Rick is still here, and I'm assuming he will be, he's going to try to break the 2020 record.
Go for it. 16. 31 rookies and Kirk Cousins.
With the 27th pick.
Cap space.
With their 27th pick of the 2021 draft.
What did the price tag wind up being again on Trent Williams? It was a 5th and a third.
Third next year. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think that price, if we go back a month ago and we had this discussion on this show and said, all right, what would you give up for Trent Williams? I think all of us said, a second, like, for sure a third, and then let's say a future 5th if you flip-flopped him. Okay, if it was between Ezra Cleveland, so second round, young, hopeful tackle, rookie, or trade exactly what they wound up getting, a 5th and next year's 3rd for Trent Williams, which would you guys have done if there was a choice? And we don't know if there was a choice. That's the other part of this discussion. But if there was a choice, what would you guys rather have?
I make the trade. I would have done everything in my power, without going overboard. I would have done everything in my power to get Trent Williams in a Vikings uniform, guys, because I'm trying to win games in 2020. And as much as I like this draft, and I know everybody else likes this draft who pays attention to the NFL draft, not just Vikings people. There's not one person who covers the NFL draft, who watches the NFL. Nobody who I've talked to thinks the Vikings didn't fare well over the weekend in the NFL draft. But even that being said, it's fool's gold or a fool's errand to think that these guys are going to come in and immediately make this a much better football team. That's just not how it works in the NFL. Rookies rarely have major impact, especially at the positions of need that the Vikings have and drafted. Offensive line, corner, wide receiver. These are positions where it's the hardest to make immediate impact when you get into the league. Trent Williams does that. Trent Williams comes in and immediately you're going to get a certain level of play from the guy. Yes, he didn't play at all last year. Collar, I think, said today on Score North Live, weekdays noon to 2, by the way, me and a rotating cast of Score North personalities, and anytime you want on the totally free Score North app, that he hasn't played a full 16-game season since 2013 or 2015?
2013.
Either, it's a long time. Okay, but you at least know when he's healthy, you're going to get a certain level of play from Trent Williams, and he makes your offensive line better. So I would have gone to almost any lengths within reason to make Trent Williams a Viking if that was possible.
I think they did. I think they.
That's very well possible.
I think they absolutely did. And in fact, according to an NFL.com report, as of Friday, they were in contract negotiations, and then Trent or his camp said, you know what? Minnesota. Let's see. The 49ers, the Rams, and the Vikings like me. Where do I want want to go. And then it leaked out, and Ian Rappaport reported that late Friday night. And, of course, the Williams camp and his people came back and said, oh, we never said that. Yeah. We never said that, which, of course, is probably BS. I don't think it's something clandestine. I think it probably is not. It's probably not money, and it's probably not the compensation, because I do think the Vikings would have pulled the exact same trade with Washington. I think at the age of 31 going on 32, what good old Trent decided to do, and it makes sense, is look at the situations and look at, do you want to go to the Vikings and be reunited with Kirk Cousins, who I believe you blocked for 3 years, who is a nice player, not saying he's bad, he's not, okay? Or do you want to go to the Bay Area and play for Kyle Shanahan, who was your offensive coordinator in 2010 and is considered one of the brightest young offensive minds still in this game, with a competitive team, and you're going to be stepping into Joe Staley's spot, who's retiring, with a team that I think right now, right or wrong, is thought to be better than the Vikings. I think Trent probably said, I'll take Dorby.
I buy it. I buy the reports, and I'm reading this from ESPN. I'll just read this, and then I'll give you my thoughts here. Washington offensive tackle Trent Williams denying that he struck down a potential trade to the Vikings because he didn't want to play in Minnesota. He told ESPN Saturday, so he went on the record with this. No, that's not true, Williams said. However, sources confirmed to ESPN that the potential trade partners were informed at some point Friday that Williams did not want to play for the Vikings, as was first reported by NFL Network. So now you have ESPN and NFL Network saying, no, like someone from his camp did say this. And I believe it. I think Trent Williams probably doesn't want it to be out there. Like, he doesn't want any bad blood. But is there a chance that he played 3 years with Kirk Cousins and was like, you know what? I don't know. I don't hate Kirk, but right. 3 years with Kirk was enough for me. And if I have a chance to go play in San Francisco and all the things that Judd just mentioned. So, you know, if there was full buy-in and Trent Williams was all in and Trent Williams was all about Cousins and the Vikings, and they had a chance to get him for a fifth and a future third, I would say, yeah, I'd probably roll the dice on him staying healthy enough for 14 or 15 games. But there are, like, the fact that this guy has played in the NFL for about a decade, and only twice in 9 seasons has he played 16 games, that tells you something there too. So if there's any hesitation, or if there's any sort of, I'm not sure if I'm into this, then don't then look to overpay and say, well, how about we sweeten the pot by giving you more money and giving more picks to Washington.
I'm sure there are things about Trent Williams that we don't know, that either that he's a better player than maybe we think he is, or maybe he's not as good of a player as we think he is. The layman on the outside looking in, just watching NFL football. The Vikings obviously have a lot more information on Trent Williams than we do. And if some of that information makes them say he's not worth the capital that was asked for it, or if he just, for whatever reason, said, I'm not coming here, then I'm not going to go too far out of my way, or too far outside the reach of what's reasonable to get Trent Williams in a Vikings uniform. But if he is anywhere close to the player that we know him to be, given his track record in the league, and if there was a way to get him here and make him happy without overpaying, I would have gone really far to make that happen.
So as it stands, they wind up with Ezra Cleveland, and if you look right now at the offensive line depth chart, they didn't really do a lot with the guard position in this draft, but is it possible that either Ezra Cleveland or Riley Reif could move inside, right?
That's exactly right. I think left guard is solved.
But
in their minds.
If it's Riley Reif and he moves to left guard, or either way, it's only solved for 1 year,
right?
Unless you think Riley Reif is going to stick around for less money or something. Mm-hmm. But it is solved, at least on paper, for 2020. And then the right guard spot appears to be just an open competition once and if training camp hits at some point. So how do you guys feel about the Vikings offensive line after this draft and looking at what they have? Brian O'Neill, I think we all feel pretty good about. Right guard, up in the air. Bradbury needs to get better, but he was a first-round pick. And then Ezra Cleveland and Riley Reif.
Robbie?
I mean, it's the same offensive line that they had last year until we find out what Ezra Cleveland is and if he can play at the next level, or what position he's going to play. Is he going to be a tackle? Will he be a left tackle? Will he be a right tackle? And you bump Ryan O'Neal to the left side? Will you bump Riley Reif inside? We don't know exactly how this thing is going to be configured, but ultimately, because of what I just said a minute ago, guys, about how hard it is to come in and make an impact in your rookie year, and specifically at the offensive line position, I haven't seen an upgrade to this offensive line yet. I like Ezra Cleveland. I like the pick. Did not expect him to fall to them all the way at 58. But have you seen anything to indicate that this is a better offensive line than it was in 2019? Outside of another year of experience in the system with Gary Kubiak, et cetera, you would expect maybe a step forward in terms of the progression of the guys that are here. But when you just look at what's on paper, are they better than they were last year? I don't know that to be a fact.
I think it's fair to say that with picks the Vikings made in this draft, that the realistic outlook should be that we think that they're trending in the right direction for 2021. 2020, we don't know. And if you're going to obviously not have any camps in May and June and show up at some point in when? July, August? To expect this class is going to get into camp and hit the ground and take off, it's folly. So that being said, though, the Vikings and Spielman in particular addressed a lot of needs that this team had to build itself up for the future. That doesn't mean the guys can't get really valuable experience in 2020. But if we're grading this right now and being like, oh boy, this is no. And in fact, today, I finally figured out a grading system for drafts that makes sense. All right? Because I've been thinking, this is really stupid because we try and grade this immediately like, they got an A+, it's great. 2 grades from now on, okay? Immediate impact grade. So if you're a good team, did you draft guys who are going to step in 2020 and be good? That's 1 grade. The second grade, overall, prime team, the Packers, right? The immediate impact grade of the Green Bay Packers is probably an F.
And it's being panned all across.
Right.
Yes.
But you know what? For all I know, they got a quarterback for 2022.
Yeah.
But my point is, as far as if you're a Vikings fan, we have no clue that these guys, aside from maybe Jefferson and maybe Gladney, and that might be a stretch, are going to step in the coming season and work. But 2 years down the road, it might be fantastic.
Yeah. If you're trying to figure out how much better a football team you are based on what you've drafted and developed, you're better served to go back and look at the 2018 draft and who's still on the roster from that, who has a chance to make a big leap forward this year. The 2019 draft and who's still on the roster from that has a chance to make a big leap forward in terms of their progression this year. To look at 2020 and ask yourself how much they'll impact or try and assess how much better this football team is based on how much they'll impact the football team it's a foolish exercise, to be quite honest with you.
The other thing that we tend to do, I think, with drafts like this, you look at the first and second and even sometimes third round picks and you jump to the best possible conclusion about them.
No.
And then with the fourth, fifth, and all the way through, you like those guys are crapshoots, but like, first, second, third round picks. And so if you look at the Vikings the last 5-10 years in drafts, in 2015, in the first 3 rounds, you would have said, all right, Trey Waynes, Eric Kendricks, Danielle Hunter, awesome. You got a starting cornerback, you fixed a need at linebacker, and you found a pass rusher over there in Danielle Hunter to go opposite Everson Griffin. Like, all of it on paper is great. And in retrospect, it was. Like, they nailed those 3 picks for the most part, and they nailed Stephon Diggs a little bit later on. Mm-hmm. But then there's other drafts like 2013 where the Vikings had 3 first-round picks, and we all sat there that night, and in your head you're thinking, like, you're only thinking best-case scenario because they're all first-round picks. These are all guys that we've seen in mock drafts and big boards, and wow, they drafted Sharif Floyd. Man, there's an 8-year defensive tackle starter. Xavier Rhodes, lockdown cornerback. They got that one right. And Cordero Patterson, game-breaking wide receiver. Like, all these holes that were filled, and in the moment you give them the treatment of what their best outcome would be.
Right.
And so that's what the Vikings kind of protected against by drafting 15 players, is that, all right, let's take the 4 guys in the first 3 rounds. All right, Justin Jefferson, wide receiver, Jeff Gladney, cornerback, Ezra Cleveland, tackle, and then Cameron Dantzler, the cornerback. Mm-hmm. Like, ideally, you would have nailed all 4 of those, and now you've got 2 starting corners, you got a franchise left tackle, and you got a star wide receiver. But, like, the reality is 2 of those guys are probably busts. Like, that's the reality.
Or will struggle for a while.
Sure. But you hedged by taking 11 other players. And out of those 11 other players from rounds 4 through 7, there's a really good chance that, like, 4 of them become starters for you.
Eventually,
sure. And that's kind of like, that's the cushion that the Vikings allowed themselves by drafting that many players.
But Rhodes,
except that crappy Iowa quarterback. I don't know what that was all about.
It's your developmental QB to go with Browning.
He's
or
an
something.
Iowa quarterback. He's garbage.
Okay, your hate, and I heard that this meltdown on Score North Live too.
He's terrible.
Your hate for a guy from the Big Ten for the Hawkeyes. He might stink. It's irrational.
Yeah, when I think great aerial attacks, I think Iowa football.
We here at Score North give you hard hitting breakdowns until it gets to teams Phil doesn't like, and then we crap on them.
Dude, Nate Stanley. All right, Nate Stanley played 3 years at Iowa. Okay, all right. First of all, he plays for Iowa, so
exactly.
But like, how many NFL tight ends did that guy have? Like, he threw to T.J. Hawkinson. Who was the other tight end they had? Noah Fant.
He's got accuracy problems.
That dude had NFL tight ends all over the field for 3 years, and he couldn't complete.
If Tanner Morgan had just been taken by the Vikings, you'd be the most excited guy in the studio.
That's true.
You'd be like, Tanner Morgan, man, and PJ developed him.
Sure. Actually, Tanner, we're going to get to a 2021 mock draft here at some point. Tanner Morgan, I wonder where. I haven't looked at any of them, but there was that one year where Todd McShay had Mitch Leidner as the 24th overall pick for the Cowboys.
I remember it.
Yeah. So. But
anyway,
go ahead.
The Rhodes point is this. Rhodes goes first round 2013, right? And we all thought, oh man, great pick. It's going to be, and it was eventually. But if the kid that the Vikings took from TCU, Gladney, right, Jeff Gladney, if he struggles next year, you shouldn't be like, oh, it's a bad pick. You have no clue,
right?
And in fact, I would say that the Vikings still should sign a veteran corner, at least one, to ease this kid in as slowly as possible. When you look at this class, the expectation should be, I think, what's it going to do for the future of the Vikings? It should not be, how's it going to impact 2020? Because when we think that way, that's how you ruin players, they lose confidence, or they just stink, and it doesn't help you.
Yeah. So we've got plenty more to discuss off the Vikings draft and more questions to answer. And also, what should the NFL take from just the overall Zoom experience of those 3 days?
Ramie was right about this.
We'll dive into that as well. And The Last Dance, episodes 3 and 4, were just off the charts amazing last night.
You as happy as I was, guys?
So we'll do that too. Carmen Electra hasn't aged in 20 years.
I got questions.
Ramie had a couple questions too that we threw out earlier on Score North Live.
And I got questions just about her, though.
We'll get to them.
I mean,
5 o'clock.
I'm so
today.
Confused.
Mackey and Judd with Ramie here on Score North and the Score North app. And you can listen to us in podcast form, too, on Apple, Spotify, or the Score North app from the TCL studios.
I want a mock! I want to mock!
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it. That's right. There's more where this came from, too. This is just the first one.
Who do we got?
This is from CBSSports.com.
Oh, I got one, too.
Ooh.
Uh-huh. Oh,
right.
Dueling mocks.
Jonathan, can you hit it for us? Let's do this. Hold on. Jonathan, can you hit the NFL music? Okay. We can't proceed until Jonathan.
There we go. All right.
We like contractually cannot proceed.
No,
until
we can't.
Is that
our
agreement now?
Without music.
Very talented Jonathan was on the phone with a listener trying to find the NFL films music.
An octopus.
All right.
That's a very uncomfortable term. Thank you for that, Ramie.
What? An octopus. You have many tentacles to do many things all at once. It's a compliment.
Boy.
It's a compliment. You have to be an octopus to be a good producer.
Like
I've said this before.
Can I hear the 2021 mock draft, please?
Sure.
Please.
All right. Trevor Lawrence, number one, to the... And the order of the teams is interesting, too, because it's sort of like, ooh, how crappy do they think your team is going to be? Well, they think the Jaguars are going to be really crappy at CBSSports.com, drafting Trevor Lawrence, number one.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the Bengals still crappy, drafting number two.
Do you want to do a pick and then I'll do a pick from our dueling mocks, or you want to do yours and then I'll do mine?
Well, do you have... Which mock do you have?
I have the Athletic 2021 mock draft.
But the draft order might be different.
That's what I'm saying. It might be interesting to see how crappy your guy thinks they'll be and how crappy my guy thinks they'll be.
Okay, give us the number one overall.
Number one is Jacksonville Jaguars. We're going to take Trevor Lawrence.
All right, number two for you?
Washington will take Penei Sewell, offensive tackle from Oregon.
CBS has Washington picking third, drafting the same player. They've got the Bengals drafting second, taking Jamar Chase, wide receiver. Mm-hmm. All right, skip to anywhere.
See, my guys here at The Athletic, number three, they don't see the Teddy Bridgewater experiment working out in Carolina. They got the Panthers with the third pick, taking quarterback Justin Fields from Ohio State 1 year after signing Teddy.
Okay, I call shenanigans here between either CBS Sports or The Athletic. Because
how dare you?
CBS
How
Sports,
dare you, sir? How dare you question Dan Brugler?
CBS Sports has the Panthers not quite as crappy, but drafting 5th and taking quarterback Justin Fields from Ohio State.
What's the release time on these 2 mock drafts? Do you have yours, Rami?
Let me see here. This was released. No, I don't have a time, just a date, April 27th. This was put out this morning.
Do you have a,
hot off
date,
the presses.
Phil?
This was put out this morning as well.
Are you accusing collusion?
I don't know.
Are you saying there's been collusion?
It seems odd that both of them would have Carolina, who just signed a hero from the Minnesota Vikings.
I say hashtag no collusion.
Well, all right, let's skip to your Bears here at pick 14. Decidedly mediocre, probably finishing like 8-8.
That would be the worst thing that could happen.
And your Bears are taking Iowa State quarterback Brock Purdy with the 14th overall pick.
See, they have my Bears finishing at 15 in the athletic draft and taking free safety Javon Holland out of Oregon.
Interesting. All right. I'm trying to find...
I've got a Bears question once we're done with this for our colleague.
All right. CBSSports.com has the Vikings picking 26th. So making a nice little run.
Yeah.
Decent little season.
Playoff team right there. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And selecting from Alabama, defensive back Josh Jobe. Josh Jobe
what is he?
Would add more secondary depth.
Is he a corner?
Just says defensive back. I'm going to assume he's a cornerback.
I'm going to Google him. Josh Jobe?
Guys,
yes,
I love the Vikings pick that Dan Brugler has at 23 for your Minnesota Vikings. I don't know who he is. I just like the pick based on the name. It's Carlos Boogie Basham, you guys.
Wow.
Defensive end out of Wake Forest. Boogie Basham.
I want a mock. I want to mock.
All right, one more interesting development here. I glossed over this one. With the 18th pick in the first round, according to CBSSports.com's 2021 mock.
The Packers are taking a quarterback?
Not even close.
A gopher is going.
Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I love that
going
pick.
to the Tennessee Titans. The Packers should take Rashad Bateman.
That's a great
That's
pick.
who Dan Brugler has taking Rashad Bateman as the Green Bay Packers at number 22, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. That's right.
Whoa! I want to mock.
Wow. So he's got Bateman to the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be too little too late. Bateman will be
That's
catching
right
passes
before
from
Carlos
Jordan
Boogie Basham goes to your Minnesota Vikings.
Love.
I think Bateman actually might play his way into just outside the top 10.
Dude, he's going to be
He's incredibly
ridiculous this year.
talented.
Yes. It's going to be ridiculous.
Who does your guy have winning the Super Bowl, Mackey, with the 32nd pick? Because this is a roundabout way of predicting who will win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, you're right.
It is. And I can't tell. It looks like the same matchup as last year. He's got the Chiefs beating the Niners.
See, my guy has the Chiefs beating the Ravens.
Okay.
And Brevin Jordan, tight end out of Miami.
Who's the most surprised playoff team from what you can tell on your list?
Let's see
Like
here.
the highest. Mine is on CBSSports.com. He's got the Buffalo Bills drafting 27th. Is that from a trade?
Oh, wow. No.
Or does he have the Buffalo Bills
No, he
just
might
going
have the
deep?
Buffalo Bills being good. What's up, Rami?
Got the Falcons getting the last seed in the East, or I mean in the NFC East. Broncos are making it. Chargers, he's got the Chargers in the playoffs at number 12.
Don't know about that.
The Dolphins have the 11th pick.
Yeah, I mean,
Dolphins might be okay.
they're probably not going.
great,
They shouldn't play two of this.
They might
year,
be
though.
okay.
Yeah, the Dolphins in this mock have
Actually,
the
I'm looking at
fourth.
this backwards. I'm sorry.
Fourth.
I'm an idiot.
Never mind,
Lord.
Rami.
Wow.
Never mind.
Rami's like, yeah, the Jaguars and the Redskins are playing in the Super Bowl.
He's got the Jets as the AFC representative in the Super Bowl.
He does have the Jaguars in the playoffs at 17. That would be the last team from the
No thanks.
from the NFC making it. Steelers.
Well, but the
Titans, Bills.
Well, no, but the Jaguars have 2 picks in the first round. Anyways, all
Okay,
right.
just one thing quick.
That's true.
Is
I don't know
there,
if that's I traded for.
is there any more sign of having cashed it in when you're asked to do the day after the draft a mock draft for the next year? Is there any bigger sign of completely cashing things in than picking the exact 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl this past season to go back again?
Yeah, you got to at least.
That is the lazy. Like, just don't even do it then.
At least put the Ravens at 32
Right.
or something.
That's
you know?
fine, but-
Mix it up a little bit.
Really, you're going to pick the
Man.
same 2 teams?
It's ridiculous.
That's what we like to call mailing it in the business.
Yeah. So Tomorrow, Judd's going to unveil his 2021 mock draft.
I can't wait
Just
for
the
that.
order of it, though.
Can't
Just the
wait.
order of it.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. I've got the Chiefs and
Okay.
whatever.
What are the things the NFL should take moving forward from its 3-day Zoom draft extravaganza?
I need Commissioner Roger Goodell from now on at home. Not standing up, though. Friday night was glorious. In the easy chair, and they, at one point late on Friday, came back.
Slumped in
He
the
had
easy
fallen
chair.
asleep. There is no question in my mind. He had fallen asleep. And you know what I
You
said?
see like a selfie stick poke him from the side?
I would make a case that late Friday, with Roger Goodell in his easy chair in his home, he has never been more likable.
Agreed.
I loved it.
Totally
I agree.
agree.
I didn't laugh and say, "Oh, you fell asleep." I laughed and said, "He's me for a second."
He was kind of nerdy. He was kind of like, he stumbled a few times here and there. And
I loved it.
He was human, and he was the most likable. And there was a report that came out that he sent a memo to all 32 NFL teams and said, this might have been just based on like everything coming together and how terrible times are in the United States right now and around the world. This might have been one of the most important and impactful things the NFL has ever pulled off in 100+ years.
And you know what? As much as I wanted to see technical glitches and chaos and pandemonium, none of that, and I can't tell you how much credit the people behind the scenes at ESPN deserve for that. To pull off this thing, guys, we talked about all the moving parts of a virtual NFL draft, and with almost certainty that something serious would go wrong. Like either a team wasn't going to be able to get a pick in on time, or Roger Goodell's feed would get messed up. Nothing really bad happened, and the people behind the scenes at ESPN and Trey Wingo for quarterbacking the whole thing, like standing ovation for them to pull it off as well as they pulled it off. Even though I was rooting for chaos and pandemonium and technical glitches, it didn't happen, and that's because of them.
It was great, and I would say this. It's a great sport, but for the most part, I think the public perception of the National Football League is it's this billion-dollar, ruthless, heartless sport, right? Because for the most part, people aren't important.
Mm-hmm.
It's the players are, the teams are, but they cut people constantly, and there have certainly been times where, since Goodell's been in charge, there have been things where he makes decisions, and you're like, that was totally done for PR, not for the right reasons, and all of those things. And I would argue the league has never looked more human than they did for 3 days. Down to things like Belichick's dog. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just small stuff. But for this league, I think it was on day 2 when they cut to Belichick's Nantucket kitchen, right? And they show a graphic, Patriots coach Bill Belichick, and there's his dog at the computer. Just stuff like that. They've never looked more human than they did, and they actually had a face put to them in a sport that rarely has a human face.
Yes, it's always been about the shield, right?
Yeah.
And, no player will rise above the shield. The shield continues to forge on ahead, even as its top stars leave the league, right? Peyton Manning can retire, doesn't matter. In the NBA, it's a little bit more player-centric, although it works for them, too. Mm-hmm. If Michael Jordan leaves, they kind of struggle for 4 or 5 years. When Kobe Bryant leaves, you definitely feel it. And I think the NFL can still continue to be brand above individual, but to humanize the coaches and the GMs and some of the players who are being drafted and the commissioner, it was a home run. And not to always bring baseball into the mud and drag them through, but it's why can't baseball be the one to innovate like this? And I get that this is forced innovation that the NFL never would have considered if not for the pandemic. And some of it's just they were the first out of the gate, and they had to come up with something in a way to operate from homes, and so it was the timing of it was.
There's no reason to ever invite draft prospects to the draft again.
It sounds like they're still going to have a green room next year.
I know, because I'm sure there's money to be made in some way, shape, or form by the way that they've done the draft all these years. But I'm telling you, short of the business side of it, as far as just giving me a TV product that's entertaining and better than what you've ever done, there is no reason, and I've been saying this for years, that the shot in a kid's living room celebrating that moment that he's worked his whole life for with his parents and maybe, in normal times, his high school coaches or having his friends and loved ones around. That's such a better moment, so much more real, so much more human than what the NFL normally does of having these guys walk across the stage and hug a guy who they're going to hate within the next year.
Yes.
There is no reason ever to invite draft prospects to a draft ever again. Send them the kits like you did this year with the cameras and the phones and the whole setup. Maybe even, in normal times when we can have an IT guy go into their house and set it up and make it really look nice and professional, you do that. But there is no reason for the NFL to go back to doing the draft the way that they have till now. Zero reason.
What can stay?
Well, the things that I want to stay are, I love these sometimes uncomfortable and sometimes like even embarrassing like look-ins on general managers and coaches, because there's a lot of coaches. Like there was a moment where Bill O'Brien didn't know he was on camera, and so he's like yelling at someone on a
trade fell through with Detroit. He got really mad and stomped away. His dog's like, "What's wrong?" And
that's fascinating. And tough luck for him. Like you're on camera, so don't act like an idiot. Mm-hmm. But I would love to keep GMs and coaches in their little quarantine Zoom basements and atmospheres. I want to see Jerry Jones on his yacht. I want to see Bill Belichick in his jungle-themed den or whatever the hell that thing was. I want to see Mike Zimmer with like 9 taxidermy heads above him while they pick their 15th player. Like I want to see that stuff, but teams are going to say, well, if our facilities are open, that's where all of our draft boards are. Like that's where all of our technology is. It's a pain in the ass to get it set up this way. It's just easier for everyone to be in the same war room. And so I don't know how we're ever going to be able to capture GMs and coaches in their habitats. But I think if you can keep the player aspect intact, that preserves some of it. But would you guys rather see a war room shot or Mike Zimmer in his taxidermy basement?
It's not even close.
For sure. Me too. But how do you convince teams to do it that way? Can't. It's almost impossible.
I think some of the more, first of all, teams that have a younger head office or front office and who are a little bit more progressive in the way that they think probably see advantages in the way that this was done, and you'll see that from teams in the future. Some of the more old school guys, i.e. Mike Zimmer, they're probably going to go back to the way of doing it that they've gotten used to doing it. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see some sort of remote element to in front offices to the NFL draft in the future, of guys doing it from home or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. Okay, now that you guys have had a few days to wrap your heads around the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings were chasing the Packers last year. The Packers with new offensive system, like everything, new relationship between LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, and maybe looking to take a step forward this year. And they waste, in my mind, their first-round pick on a quarterback that's not going to be ready for 2 or 3 years. Like, if you're a Vikings fan, you should be thrilled about this.
Yes.
Now that you guys have had some time to wrap your heads around what the Packers did, how do you feel about it from a Vikings perspective?
They got to be thrilled, right? Absolutely thrilled. Here's the thing that I love, too. This is going to cause a rift, acrimonious relationship. This could end LaFleur and Rodgers, and here's why. When Aaron fell to 24 in 2005 and Ted took him, Ted was new, and Brett was mad at Ted. Now, he shouldn't have been, but he was, right? But if I'm not mistaken, that was going into what became Mike Sherman's last year as head coach. And so Brett never really blamed Mike. So if you're mad at the GM, chief executive, who really cares, right? That guy's upstairs. It can be a bit of a problem, but it's not a major problem. We learned today, Jeremy Fowler, our friend from ESPN, tweeted out that the Green Bay Packers were so intent on getting Jordan Love that they called the Minnesota Vikings for a first-round trade. Mm-hmm. The Minnesota Vikings, they don't deal. I went back and looked. In 2008, the Vikings and Packers made a third-day draft day deal, which exchanged like 5th and 7th round picks, okay? Mm-hmm. But we're talking about the Green Bay Packers were calling everybody, including the team that they supposedly hate the most or is up there, to try and make a trade to get Jordan Love. That trade, you guys know as well as I do, was not mandated by Mark Murphy. It was not mandated by our guy Goody. It was mandated by Matt LaFleur, who clearly has fallen in love with Jordan Love. No pun intended. But Aaron Rodgers is going to see, because he's a surly, cantankerous type of guy. He's going to see right through this. And he is basically the guy who has been left by his wife now. This is going to cause... I'm serious. This is going to cause a rift, and I don't
She's not even sneaking around, though. She's just like...
He left.
Hey, me and Bob are going to get lunch.
He left. He left.
Moved him into the house.
Yeah. Exactly. And Aaron...
you mind if Frank lives with us for
and think
a
about
while?
The most awkward quarantine situation you could possibly come up with.
Think about this, though. Think about this. So basically from day one, Jordan Love is going to become Matty LaFleur's project. And Aaron is going to play 1 or 2 more years, but the Packers were 13-3. Mm-hmm. Like, this is, as far as I'm concerned, the Green Bay Packers, knowingly or not, have dropped a grenade into Lambeau. Good luck with that.
It better be knowingly, by the way.
But, Judd, and I'm not saying anything that you're saying is wrong about how Aaron Rodgers feels about this, but when we talk about the impact that this could have on 2020, no, they didn't get Aaron Rodgers any more weapons to throw the football to, which was hilarious, by the way.
36 wide receivers drafted.
I spent a good portion of 36. My weekend on the phone laughing at the Packers to my diehard Packer fan girlfriend. And I had a great time doing it, you guys, all right? And I'll probably do it some more.
You drafted a tight end.
I know.
Okay?
Well, my team
Nobody should be laughing.
My team is just as laughable, all right?
Their 10th tight end on the roster.
I know. I get it, okay? Let me enjoy what I can enjoy.
Go, Pack, go!
Adopt the Vikings, Rob.
But is anybody else at all a little bit worried about what a spiteful Aaron Rodgers might be on the football field in 2020? A guy who is fueled by revenge and people doubting him and going out and proving them wrong, that now his own team is doubting him and drafted his eventual replacement? What this guy is going to come out and do to show them that you were wrong for drafting my replacement and I still have a lot more football left in me? I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bit scared of this. Of what this, the fire that this might light under Aaron Rodgers.
It's a logical point you're making, but it's not like he hasn't had other forms of motivation the last 4 or 5 years, and specifically the last couple of years. I don't think he has another level to his game beyond putting better pieces around him, Rami. And they missed their chance to do that. Like, if you had 2 choices, all right, to get Aaron Rodgers to play better next year, we can either, I don't know, put a star receiver next to him, or we can piss him off.
Here's the problem.
As a guy who was in Wisconsin watching Brett Favre in his last few years with the Green Bay Packers, there was no way I thought he would leave and have the best season of his career with the Minnesota Vikings. I'm done doubting the great ones. All right? Nobody thought MJ was going to come back after retiring and win 3 more championships, 3 more scoring titles, all the MVPs, all the accolades that now there is a documentary about. Stop doubting the great ones and using reason and logic and saying, well, he doesn't have anybody around him. Okay, plenty of quarterbacks have had less around them and put up better years, i.e. Tom Brady, at a later stage and age of their careers. Don't discount Aaron Rodgers, a spiteful, vengeful Aaron Rodgers, and all the stuff that you pointed out over the last few years that have been done to doubt him or make him want to prove people wrong. None of those are the slap in the face that his own team going and drafting his replacement is.
36 receivers drafted. You didn't take one. But here is the massive flaw. Here is where the Packers have screwed up. They hired LaFleur to smooth things over with Aaron after he had a falling out with McCarthy. And LaFleur has turned out to be a far worse guy to the guy who was supposed to make Aaron happy than McCarthy was. You do not, under any circumstances, 1 year bring in Matty LaFleur to be, oh, here's your young guy, Aaron, it's going to be great, and then have him turn on the quarterback unless you want to screw things up beyond belief. And look, in 3 years, this might have worked. But what I'm saying is short-term from a management philosophy, this was right now, just from a people-person type of thing, flat-out stupid.
It feels like they're punting on the era. It does. It feels like you don't know how many years of this version of Rodgers. This is not the same version of Rodgers, by the way, that existed like 8 years ago. This is a lesser version of Rodgers, but he's still really, really good and can still lead a team to a Super Bowl. And I just think in the last 2 or 3 years of whatever's left of him, why you wouldn't be all in on trying to, especially with your first and second round picks, trying to find pieces to put around him, and in free agency looking for pieces to.
And what did LaFleur say? Trust me, I'm your guy. You didn't like Mike, I'll be your guy.
Yeah.
And then the first thing he does is puts one leg in bed with Jordan Love.
Yeah. And Rami, I don't disagree with your premise of a motivated ticked off Aaron Rodgers, just like a motivated, ticked off Brett Favre who feels slighted. Like, that's definitely not something that you'd want to deal with. But if my other choice was, why don't we just go get one of the best wide receivers in the first round and
I'm not saying that this was calculated by them to piss off Aaron Rodgers and have him come out to prove them wrong. I'm just saying a byproduct, a side effect of this that might not be good for Vikings fans or me as a Bears fan is Aaron Rodgers coming out and wanting to prove the Packers wrong for what they did this offseason.
He's going to, and it's going to happen in about 2022 or 23, and it's going to be a major pain for Packers and Bears fans because he is coming.
This calls for some bonus Packer vent.
He's coming to Minnesota.
Go, Pack, go! And just listening to you guys the last 20 minutes or so, you guys are shell shocked. I'm shell shocked. I don't know what is going on right now. Goody, I'll start the fire Goody, the petition right now if you want to, because I don't see where we're going right now. And I guess I'm in a lot of angst, obviously.
Go, Pack, go! Amazing. That's hilarious. Regardless, I think all of us can agree that it's hilarious.
My favorite joke of the weekend, this guys, was when the Packers took a guard, and my girlfriend called me and said, they took another guard. And I said, well, somebody's got to protect Jordan Love.
Hey-oh! Hey! Oh.
You're on thin ice, Jude. After your Bears took another tight end, you're on very thin ice.
By the way, how funny is it that the Packers quarterback room now has A-Rod and J-Lo? That is outstanding. Everything about this is funny, you guys. Everything about this is funny right now.
Another reality show.
Hopefully it'll be funny in a few years, but it's definitely funny right now.
It is.